don't know
Me too.
who everybody is.
So we should start.
Couple moms and teachers. And
Cliff, are we ready to go?
Did you?
I did.
Calling around, investigating.
Spent special ed money?
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's meeting. It's a public hearing on the bond. Then we will have a public hearing on the proposed 2019-2020 budget, and then we will have a review of the 2019 warrant. So, thank you all for coming. And Melissa, would you please call the roll?
Yes. And I'll start on the left side of the board table tonight. James Sweeney,
here,
Kathleen Abrazizi,
Here.
Caitlin Parnell,
Here.
Karen Yusenka,
Here.
Jason Cipriano.
here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table tonight is Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Earl Metzler, and the SAU's CFO and Business Administrator, Jeffrey Dowd. And next to me is the Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Roxanne Wilson. And also, I'd like to point out before we move on to the public sitting here tonight and also those watching at home that we have all of our district administrators and directors sitting behind me along the exterior wall here. So thank you for being here tonight.
Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, good. Doesn't really matter.
You're up.
We'll begin tonight with the outline of the evening. First, we will, which we've already done, we've introduced the district and the board to you. We'll have a presentation of the warrant article, then a public hearing on the bond, a public hearing on the budget, and then additional warrant articles. District profile. The Hampstead School District is located in Hampstead, New Hampshire, and includes two schools, Hampstead Central School and Hampstead Middle School. Currently, there are 851 students in grades pre-K through 8th grade. There are 461 students in grades 9 through 12 who are tuitioned to Pinkerton Academy in Derry. Pinkerton Academy is a public academy and the designated school of record for high school students in Hampstead.
The district governance. The Hampstead School District is overseen by the Hampstead School Board, the members of which are seated here before you. They direct activities of the school district through the superintendent, who oversees the day-to-day operations of the school district and carries out the board's directives. He does that through the SAU staff, the building principals, district directors, and the building principals through their building staff, and the district directors through their staff.
The mission of the Hampstead School District is to provide challenging education experiences that prepare all students to succeed to their individual potential in a changing world. Our school board goals for 2018-19, first, curriculum and assessment, foreign language in elementary schools, facility improvements, communications, public relations, the budget, and the student well-being and safety and security.
As we do in these presentations, as we talk about the district profile, I'd like to take a moment early in the presentation to talk about some of the district performance. This is one of many measures that the board looks at when assessing overall district performance, but we typically look at the performance of our students on statewide assessments. Hampstead historically has scored in the upper quartile of statewide assessments across the spectrum of all academic areas. And I'm going to highlight the most recent performance of Hampstead and put it in perspective. You'll be able to see the state average results as well. For the English Language Arts assessment for 2017-2018, you can see overall district performance on the left side, Hampstead School District, well above the state performance. And then you'll see the breakout to the right of each of the two buildings, the Hampstead Central School and the Hampstead Middle School. And again, both performances within those schools were well above the state average for English Language Arts. We'll look on the next slide and we'll see the statewide assessment for math for 2017-18. And once again, the Hampstead School District overall well ahead of the statewide average, and then individually, the schools were both well ahead of the statewide averages at the school level. Next, we'll take a look at the science assessment. The note here on science is that this is grades 5 and 8 only, based on the assessment. But Hampstead School District, grades 5 and 8 performed above the statewide performance. So that should give you, again, that's one of many measures that we look at when we look at the overall district performance. But it happens to be one of the ones that's easier for us to communicate oftentimes for people that aren't involved in a lot of the day-to-day operations of the schools. Okay.
I'm pleased to present the 2019 school district warrant. To the inhabitants of the school district of the town of Hampstead, New Hampshire, qualified to vote in district affairs. First session of annual meeting deliberative. You are hereby notified to meet at the Hampstead Middle School, 28 School Street, Hampstead, New Hampshire, on Tuesday, the 5th day of February 2019 at 7:00 p.m. This session shall consist of explanation, discussion, and debate of warrant articles number 2 through 5. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. A, warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. B, warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for a final vote on the main motion as amended. And C, no warrant article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. Second session of the annual meeting is voting. Voting on warrant articles number 1 through 5 will be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with town meeting, voting to be held on Tuesday, the 12th day of March, 2019, at the Hampstead Middle School, 28 School Street, Hampstead, New Hampshire. The polls will be open from 8 a.m. and remain open until 8:00 p.m. Article 1, election of officers. To choose the following school district officers. School board member, 3-year term. The filing period for vacancies is January 23rd to February 1. You may file with the district clerk at the Hampstead Central School or at the superintendent's office. Article 2 is the bond proposal. The public hearing on the budget will follow the public hearing on the bond, which we are going to announce now. Article 2 is the bond issue. Okay. For clarification, the public hearing on the bond is now open, and I shall read it to you. Article 2, bond issue. Hampstead Central School Repair, Renovation, and Renewal Project, 20-year bond. Shall the voters of Hampstead School District raise and appropriate the sum of $7,994,500 for the Hampstead Central School Repair, Renovation, and Renewal Project, and authorize the issuance of not more than $7,994,500 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and authorize the district to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, to apply for, accept, and expend any state or other aid that may be available for said project, and further raise and appropriate an additional sum of $190,980 for the first year's interest payment on the bond. A 3/5 majority vote shall be required. Now I just want to talk briefly about the bond issue, a little bit how we got here. The design plan being presented to you tonight captures the needs of a 21st century elementary school, including safety and security features, appropriate educational space based on program requirements, energy-efficient renovations, and a design that meets all current building codes and regulations. The Hampstead Central School Construction Committee was formed for the purpose of working with all members of the construction team to advance the project known as the Hampstead Central School Repair, Renovation, and Renewal Project. And the theme for the project is Building Hampstead's Future. You'll learn tonight, as you watch the presentation, that this design proves to be the most cost-effective and satisfies all the identified needs for the school and the community. It offers a long-term solution that meets the needs of today and can adjust to future enrollment and program needs for the next 30 or 40 years. The board agrees that it is time to pass this long overdue project. First and foremost, we have a responsibility to our children to continue to deliver excellence in education in a facility that is safe, in good repair, and conducive to learning. The board recognizes that our schools are a hub for not only educational, but cultural, health, and civic partnerships that improve the entire community. The building design takes into account the input of all stakeholders and will benefit both educational and community needs. At the end of the presentation, you will have an opportunity to ask your questions and have them answered by members of our construction team. I'd just like to note that other upcoming opportunities to learn more about this project include on January 19th, the Hampstead Public Library is holding an open forum, and there will be a table there or a booth to help residents who may have more questions about this project. On February 18th, we will hold another senior coffee. It will be held at the Hampstead Central School, and tours of the school will also be available on that day. And on March 10th, 2 days before we vote, there will be an open house at Central School, and tours will also be available at that time. So, with that said, now I'd like to invite Mr. Gino Baroni of the Trident Corporation to come up, do a little self-introduction, speak about his role as our owner's project manager, and also introduce other members of the construction team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pardon my voice, I'm coming down with a cold, so I'll try to speak clearly. My name is Gino Baroni, as been mentioned. I'm the owner and managing principal of Trident Project Advantage Group. We are an owner's project management firm that has been engaged by the district to help advise, oversee, organize, and facilitate the hopeful successful bond vote and then design and construction of this project. We have done this for several school districts in the area, most notably Salem, which we're on our 7th school now, Pelham, Hampton Academy, and several others. So we feel very comfortable and very well versed in helping the district and helping the town get the most cost-effective design and construction on schedule and on budget. We have a very, very experienced team on this project. It's the same team we had last year. And we feel that this team, if allowed, will give you, again, the best tax benefit, the dollar for your benefit. So having said that, from Trident, we have Paul Pandolina from our office as project manager. From Bonnet, Page & Stone, we have Keith McBay and Barrett Salter. And this team has worked tirelessly with the building committee, together with the architect, Craig Jones. I think Craig will be up here shortly to explain the program again. This program is very much the same as we did last year. There was no compromise, no reduction. This is what the committee has determined to be most appropriate and most cost-effective to deliver a high-quality education facility for your students. With that, Craig, I invite you up.
Thank you, Gino.
I think we've got someone from their team is going to.
Well, we're getting set up here. I can go ahead and start. So I want to thank the school district for having us be involved in this, again, for a second year. It's been an honor to be able to serve and to learn more about your community and to learn more about the needs of the school specifically. So as I get started, I want to ask two questions. I get to ask questions now. You guys get to ask questions later. My first question is, how many of you were here last year for the presentation? A very good sampling. Yes, I had expected that. So any one of you could come up and give this presentation at this point. But I'll run you through it. A second question is, why, and this is rhetorical really, why is this being brought up year after year? Why is the bond being asked for the school budget? And the real reason for that is because there's a need. And so where we started was looking at the needs of the community, the needs of the school specifically. And so we went through what's called a needs-based assessment. We're not looking at what are the desires or what are the wants, but really starting with the needs. And part of that is with starting doing just what is a 21st century school and what does a 21st century school require. So the four categories, again, are safety and security, code upgrades, building efficiency, and space deficiencies. There could be other categories that come up in other areas, but these were the ones that were more specific to Hampstead. The first area is safety and security. And I got to remember, Jason, is it, which one's the pointer? Pointer? Yeah. Okay. I don't want to get the pointer mixed up here. So for safety and security, we looked at all of the secure areas around the school and within the school. If you can see the different arrows on the screen here, there are over 10 access points from the exterior of the building. In today's day and age, security is very important, and that needed to be addressed initially. Now, the district has taken steps through grants. They've been able to start a small piece of that, which we would continue on with if the building passes, and they'll continue on as best they can, but it really requires a much bigger scope. The other area is looking at the inside of the building, the interior, to make sure that the access is controlled properly so that once students are within the school or the public is within the school, then they can flow through the different areas that they need to get to. One example of an area within the school is the front entrance. So if you have been in the school, you recognize that the administration is kind of in the school, up the stairs, and closer to the classrooms. It doesn't give them a great location for being a stopping point or an access point for the public. So, you know, looking at ways to remediate that is what the conceptual design addresses. A next area is meeting building code requirements. Building code requirements have changed over time. They're getting more and more stringent. A lot of what is within the school would be considered grandfathered, but there are unsafe areas. There are access, egress, which would be your stair components, typically railings or widths of stairways, widths of hallways, doors that need to be to have the proper width in the case of an emergency. Also, there are restrooms. The school is lacking in the number of restrooms for all the students and for the staff. Drinking fountains, small point. But fire sprinklers are found in almost every building. They're required in every building we do commercially from here on out, and they have never been installed in the central school. So that's one area of deficiency, is the no fire suppression. Again, on building code requirements, there are some structural repairs. There's an area that's being monitored, has been monitored for a few years, just seeing how different sections of the building are moving. Also, there are hallways and doors that need to be smoke-proofed. Some of those requirements go away if sprinklers are installed in the building. So you can kind of help yourself out in one area if you take care of another. Building efficiency is something that really affects your bottom line in terms of operating budget. There are a couple areas that we looked at in the building. The most efficient is in the 60s wing. This would be the kindergarten and fourth grade classrooms. And again, this is just an example of one area within the building that we have masonry walls that have not been insulated. And so, I did the calculations, and that masonry wall gives us an R2. If you guys are familiar with an R rating on walls, even commercial standards, which are much lower than residential standards, we need an R value of R20. So we're about 10% efficient. That's just on the wall. The windows are leaking. They are in very poor condition. And the roof needs to be replaced, which would add some more insulation. So this is just one part of the building that is leaking dollars out the walls, whether it's summer from heat or the winter from the cold getting in. The other areas that we have some fresh air ventilation requirements. We're pulling fresh air right off of where there's a drive up. So they're pulling all the fumes right into the classrooms. And heating and ventilation has changed a lot to where we can install heating and ventilation for a building that is a lot more efficient today. So those would all be pieces that need to be addressed. On space deficiencies, there are certain standards that need to be met by the state. Hampstead has also taken a stance on this and said, for the best education, we want to restrict our class sizes in the preschool to 15 students, kindergarten to 18 students, and the grades up to fourth grade at 20 to 23 students per class. And that just is a performance, you're able to perform better in the classroom. The teachers are able to teach better as well. So that is one area that then gives us a lack of we don't have enough classrooms. Classrooms need to be added or clustered or reorganized within the school. Again, on space deficiencies, there are a couple classrooms that are too small. A typical classroom is 900 to 1,000 square feet. There are currently 3 classrooms that are in the 600 to 700 square foot range. So they physically can't fit the kids in these classrooms. They're just on top of one another. Again, on space deficiencies, there's the possibility of district-wide solutions, bringing district offices into the building. There is the opportunity for the community to come and use some of the other facilities like a cafeteria or a gymnasium. That is not possible at this point. There is some opportunity, but there's a greater need for that within the community, and there are definitely opportunities to be able to do that. Again, on space, there are site improvements that could be done. I failed to mention this earlier, but the portable classrooms, again, are another building deficiency or building efficiency area where a lot of money has been spent over the years to heat and cool those. they are no longer being used at Hampstead Central School. They've brought all of the children into the school, which compounds the space needs within the school. And so that's kind of a first step, but taking away that space also means that they need to have more space for for a school. The process of how we got here is there are facility assessments that date back to 2010. There are other facility assessments that our team did with Bonnet Page and Stone as well, and with Trident Group. And there was a steering committee. There was a conceptual design committee. So all of these tagged together, but just as a reminder that your community and the school board has been working on this project for over a decade. Dennis Myers Architects, who I represent, we came on 2 years ago, and we can really see where the need was. The needs haven't changed that much, although they have, the certain needs haven't changed in terms of what they need, but they have just been compounded. It's they need more space today than they did before. So I'm going to walk you through how we broke this out. It was repair to renovate and renew. That means we're renovating the places that we can, making the repairs that need to be done within the building, and then building new components if the bond is able to be passed. Just to orient you, there are essentially 3 sections of the building. There's an 80s section of the building, a 60s wing, which I spoke about earlier, and then the original building, which is the 40s wing, and you can kind of refer to that as we go through this. So we're looking at adding new spaces, which would be a new main front entry, cafeteria, music room, library. Those would be the new components, new building pieces, and then being able to make some site improvements at the back of the building. In terms of renovation, some of the areas that need to be renovated so that new could happen would be changes to the cafeteria. The kitchen cafeteria needs to be remodeled. Some of the equipment is old. The floors need to be upgraded. And to be able to utilize this kitchen properly, currently they're using a cafeteria space within the gymnasium. They would be able to mirror the kitchen so that it could serve off the other side to a new cafeteria space. And this kitchen is not, a great added cost to the project. It's one of the areas that we've been able to identify and say, well, we'd love to have new everywhere, but this is one area it can be cut back in terms of budget. And the space needs are there. Also, there are some offices. The nurses area would be moved closer to the front entry. Some of the special education rooms would need to be modified, and then there are structural repairs. This is the exterior of the building on the 60s wing, where we need new insulation, new windows, new walls, and also mechanical equipment to go along with that. On the upper level, we would need bathrooms. We need to expand the restrooms on the upper level. The library could be converted into 2 classrooms. They're already set up as essentially 2 classrooms with a movable wall that divide them, so that could be built right back in easily. And then those 3 small classrooms can be turned into 2 classrooms, and they can be used for a classroom and some other special education needs. So again, the new components are site improvements, library, a music room, cafeteria, and a main entry, new main entry, with a courtyard infill. And essentially that's just space that is picked up in the middle of the building. It can be a safe, secure zone within the school, so the students can go into that space during the day or if there's any other emergency needs. In terms of new construction then, The new construction on the main level, I'm going to kind of give you the big overview, and then there are some broken down smaller areas so you can see these specifically. And we'll talk generally about that administration area, the new front entrance. Then we'll talk about the cafeteria, the music room, and the library. And I guess initially we'll look at some of the classrooms that'll be added upstairs. So on the upper level, currently this is that 60s wing that needs the new building envelope. There's a stair right here that is non-conforming, and we would use that path to connect to a new component, which is over top of the library. It would be 2 new classrooms, and then egress so that you can get to a new elevator and stairs down to the lower level. The main entry, this is just a snapshot so you can envision this would be the new entry at the front of the building. You can kind of see how the old building is peeking out there, and then that's the gymnasium. So this is the new piece. Everything color-coded here are either renovated spaces or new spaces. So this administrative area is added on to the front of the building. There's ample room in there. And you can see what it does is it gives you good viewing angles to all of the front, to anybody who would enter from the main entry, and anybody that's going to pass by in the hallways behind. So again, this becomes a good control point for the front of the building. Nurses station is going to be also near the front entry, so that if there is a sick student, the parents don't have to go all the way through the school to go pick them up, and they can check out more easily right at the front entry. And we were able to sneak in a little PE office for the physical education currently using more of an old closet, and we can use that again as storage like it was before. This is around the back of the building, and this gives you a snapshot of the cafeteria, the music room, and some bathrooms, and a library, and again, those upper level classrooms. So when we were meeting earlier with steering committees and talking with the community, one of the things that came up is they said, we would really like to be able to use the school. How could we get into the school? Can we use it for sports? Can we use it for having events? And that was something we responded to. This cafeteria was added as a space that really frees up for the school uses. The school currently has to partition off the gymnasium, and they can't utilize that gym during parts of the day. They're having to clean it continuously. And so by bringing a new cafeteria space into the building, then that frees up the gymnasium to be utilized continuously. They can utilize it at night. They don't have to worry about other scheduling conflicts. And then the cafeteria can also be utilized during the day or the night for events. And we kind of envision that as having almost like a stage, like a feel up front. And you can reconfigure that space into a lot of different ways. Also, the music room, which has, at least in the last 20, 25 years, has been out in a portable. They're finally in the building and happy to be there, from what I understand. But, it's really cramped. It's a small space. So this is an ample-sized music room for what we would have in today's day and age. Next to that is all of the restroom facilities, and those restroom facilities can function for after school, because now we've got a way to block off this area, and the public can't, isn't going to go into the other parts of the school. We're always thinking security. So these restrooms work during the day, and then they also work for after school functions. Also, the library, we get closer to a state-of-the-art library that we would expect to have in schools today. And there are even teachable spaces out in some of the traffic flow areas where teachers and students can meet outside of the classrooms. But generally speaking, this becomes another bookend to the building. You've got the front entry, which is a secure area, and then you've got the library that it has eyes on the back of the school. These are the two major access points. So you can see how that all comes together. The traffic flow for within the school is very circular. If you're on one end of the building and you need to get to, closer to the main entry, you can come this way. If maybe there's something else going on here you don't want to disturb, then the traffic flow goes all the way around. It just helps for general congestion within the building, and quite honestly, it worked out. We tried to lay this out so we didn't have that much circulation, but this worked out the most efficient for the building program and for staging it during construction to keep the costs down. And then on the exterior, again, we have the new site circulation. Once the portables have been removed, we're able to reorganize that so that drop off and pick up for the students is a little bit safer, more secure in the back. We've taken care of that building envelope skin. We're not sucking fumes in there anymore from cars that are parked there, and hopefully this is operating better than 10% efficiency in terms of a building. And obviously all of the new components, the new building standards, are going to take it even higher than what that R20 is. So if we look at the overall new construction, we have cafeteria, library, music room, 2 new classrooms, administration, and a main entry. And in terms of remodeled spaces, we have the new remodeled 60s wing, additional bathroom or restrooms, special education and academic support areas, district offices that can be pulled in, nurse's office, structural repairs have been done, and fire suppression throughout the entire building. It's not just the new components, it would be brought into the other, the existing part of the building as well. And how that breaks out in terms of the distribution of work, which is also distribution of dollars, is that, and what we'd like to try and key into is that we're trying to build learning environments. 45% of this budget is going directly to learning environments. Safety and security is a big piece today, so it's kind of taken up a chunk of money, but that also includes the fire suppression. And then the district is able to come in, we're taking care of some of the site and other infrastructure, and we have code deficiencies that are just a part of building new today. So the merits of the project, as Mrs. Usanka mentioned earlier, this is a long-term solution. This has been in the works in this community for more than 10 years. So when you have that much effort put into doing something, doing a project and being able to re-envision it over a 10-year period, then you have more of an investment to look at it in the long term. This is a 40-year solution, and there are ways to cut the budget and say, well, we only want to do this, but in 10 years you're going to be back asking for more money. So this is thought of as a long-term solution. Again, safety and security is crucial. That already adds on to the security grants that have been gathered and implemented into the building. The efficiency of the building is maximized for operating costs. The analysis we did last year showed that the operating costs for the entire building minimally would go up. So it was almost dead even, just even because we're adding so much more building, we're taking care of some of the envelope, but your operating costs for the entire building are really not going up that much. Again, we now have a cafeteria, library, music room for the community use. There are clustered classrooms and the improved traffic flow within the building. We're code compliant. We have fire suppression throughout, and as many of the district offices are consolidated as possible. So I got to talk a little bit about the numbers. You saw the budget number earlier. It's the $7,994,500. Of that, hard costs, which are construction costs directly related to building physically, it's a $6,969,500. Soft costs are the architectural and engineering fees, management fees. There's some technology and commissioning that's in that as well. We've kept that number the same, even though the number had to go up this year because of escalation costs in construction. And then there's the owner's project contingency of $275,000. That is money that covers unforeseen conditions, things that happen along the way, and hopefully we've taken care of most everything. That can be extra money that can be used towards other finishes or technology if there's money left over. No promises there, Bonnet Page and Stone. What does this mean for a tax impact? I think it's important to mention that really we're looking at a $10 million project. We started at a $10 million project and we downgraded it. We were able to bring the cost savings down to just under $8 million. So the tax impact that you're going to see, and I believe, yes, this is in the handout. If you didn't get a handout, you can look this up for yourself. It kind of gives you an idea of if you have a $100,000 home or a $200,000 home or a $400,000 home, then what the monthly and yearly impact would be to you is listed on there. If you need more information, I'm sure that we can gather that for you as well. But just to keep in mind that on a $200,000 home, that comes down to about $12 a month. So that is a presentation that we have. I hope we answered most of the questions before you had to ask. But I think, do we want to switch to questions?
We're going
now?
to switch back over to the other.
Okay. Craig, thank you. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing for questions from the audience. I'd just like to remind you, please, that if you come to the mic, please state your name and your address, and public comments are for residents of Hampstead only. Thank you. Any questions on the proposed bond?
Chairman, willing to take comments?
Comments? Yes, of course. Questions or comments?
I'm not tall enough, I guess. Here we are again. And mainly, not only as a citizen of Hampstead, but as a selectman, I felt that if nothing else, I have to show up, and I'm willing to make some comments. Last time we went through this project, I think I supported it. I think if anything, that some of my major concerns are the safety, security, and health issues that the presentation made pretty clear are still there, and that concerns me. I'm not here to influence or tell anybody, any voter, how they should vote. I think it's a real personal matter. In many cases, that's the bottom line, the impact of the bond. And we all have different needs at home and responsibilities that we have to fill, and whether you live in a $400,000 home or a $100,000 home, there's a lot of other issues that you might have as a family. So I think this is an upfront proposal as far as the impact it's going to have, and everybody has to make that decision. I happen to be fortunate enough that I'm retired, and I live in a house that does not have a high assessment, and it will have very little impact on me personally. So for that reason, I'm comfortable with the proposal. I served on the school committee back in the day in North Andover, and we were building schools like every year. And things were different then as everything was growing, and the need was there. It was easy. We just pumped them out one after the other. We had a school building committee, made the same kind of proposals. It was a lot cheaper then. We're talking like about $2 million, and that used to shake people up instead of close to $10 million. But I think that everybody has to make their own decision. As I said, I'm concerned with the safety, security, and the health, which is a given, I think, and something that we can't afford to just put aside. And we have a responsibility. I think every citizen, and particularly our voters, have a responsibility to make sure our infrastructure is paid for, and that we make sure our buildings, not only our schools, because we are a town, it's just not two separate sections. We have the responsibility to keep all our buildings so that they don't just deteriorate and pass on those costs to somebody 10, 20 years from now. Of course, close to my heart is what you talked about somewhat, and that's the community benefits. I think it goes without saying, anybody that's listened at all, that I'm an advocate of a community center for Hampstead. I hope we have one sometime in the future, but to have the ability to come into our school and have some programs for our seniors in particular, but not only our seniors, but to be able to have some programs instead of doing fragmented things that we do now. Thank goodness for the library and some other groups that allow us to come in, churches, that kind of thing. It allows us to provide some kind of community services to some of the needy citizens in town. So that's close to my heart. And if this goes forward, I hope to work with, if I'm still around and still on the board particularly, work with the school committee to see if we can integrate some programs. So I think there's some interest in the community, not only from a school standpoint, but from a community standpoint. I commend the architects and the school committee for, as they did the last time, putting that up in the front of their agenda. So I hope the project goes through. I think putting it off is just sticking our heads in the sand. I think we have some real safety and health issues, and particularly as far as, thank goodness that we've never had a fire for a long, long, long time. And certainly we look at things have quieted down as far as safety is concerned, but they could flare up anytime. So I just wanted to make how I felt about it on a personal basis, and so I'm comfortable in supporting the project. And don't forget, I say that with tongue in cheek because it's not going to have a big impact on me. So I'm not going to put on anybody else my feelings as to whether or not they should vote for it. But we need 3/5. We haven't been able to retain that in the past. We've been able to get over 50%, but that 3/5 is a hard nut. And anybody who really has an interest in the community, I'd ask them to take a real good at this project this year and come forward and support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Selectman Guthrie. We appreciate your comments and your input, and I know that I can speak on behalf of the board that we agree with many of the sentiments, all of the sentiments that you brought forth this evening. And I know the board would like to just piggyback on that and say that ask the people in town, all the people in town, to try to embrace this project this year so that we can move forward and provide the space that we need for our children now, sooner than later. Unfortunately, this isn't going to go away, and I'm pretty sure that every board that comes after us is going to be presenting this. We have a responsibility to do that for our students and for all the residents in town. And it's just going to continue to increase in money. So I really hope, it's my wish, it's the board's wish, that everyone in town can get behind this, embrace this project, and help pass it this year for our school and for the community as a whole. So thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it. Are there any other comments?
Hi, I'm Marcy Fleming. I'm at 16 Pentucket Drive, and I'm new here. We moved in July. So I have two questions. How long does the bond last for? How many years will it take till it's paid off?
So
20.
let me answer that with just a longer answer than maybe you were expecting. So over the time that we've been putting this forward, the board did two things that impacted the cost, and they were in response to what we had heard from the voters in town. The first was if you had looked at the project years ago, I've been working on this for the better part of the last decade, we really pared back what we were asking for to what we really felt like was the bare essential minimum. And the second thing that we did in recent years is that we moved to a 20-year bond. So this is a 20-year bond, and that was done to lessen the annual tax impact for individuals. And so the numbers that you see here are consistent with that 20-year bond. And I would also add, because we had this discussion last year as well, but for those that are new, based on the projected enrollment, based on what we know today, and obviously things can change, but based on what we know today, we would not anticipate the need for any other bonds during the 20-year life of this. In other words, while we're paying this off, at least right now, we don't anticipate having to come back and say, oh, we need another one. That's not, the plan was to do this and be done with this before we are in a position where we'd have to come back to the town for things.
Okay. And also, I think it was mentioned in the beginning that this has been worked on for the better part of 10 years, and during that time, the space deficiencies have already changed from where it was. So how is it proposed that this will be sufficient for the next 30 or 40 years, space-wise, if it has already changed within the last decade?
We'll ask Craig. Would you like to answer that, please?
Yeah, we have the growth projections on there. And so today we need one extra classroom per class.
Per graduating class?
Yeah, per grade, one classroom per grade. And so they would, at today's levels, they would be able to have fewer students in those classrooms. But our growth projections haven't taken it beyond where they would need to add an additional classroom.
Okay. So taking it from 4 classrooms to 5 classrooms or whatever it is, but not to actually 6 classrooms. So making potentially larger sized classrooms within those 5. I don't know, the numbers are getting muddled, but okay.
Right.
That seems to make sense.
Also, because you're new, I'm going to have Caitlin Parnell, who is a member of our construction committee, also give you some little background information on how we got to where we are today. The plans have changed.
And I'll be quick. Because there are new people in town. And we talk about it's been 10 years that this has been worked on. The plans have changed. This plan that we're presenting this year, it's the second year we've put it up.
Okay, so this is the same one from last year?
Yes, it's the same one from last year, but we've had previous plans they started large. As Jason mentioned, they were pared down as we tried to get pieces passed.
Yeah.
And when we kind of went back to the drawing board 2 years ago and formed this new construction committee, we really needed to look at new needs, like what we were dealing with now and what we're dealing with for the next 30 to 40 years.
Okay.
So it's been 10 years, but those plans have been revised.
Okay.
Mr. Barone?
I want to mention clearly, this is not an enrollment-driven project.
Okay.
It is mostly a reprogramming for today's educational requirements. They're just not the same as they were 10 years ago or 20 years. So this repositioning is security, but it's also to allow new programs that everyone in the state is doing in a very efficient way. It also provides, by design, flexibility, so if in 10 years there will be changes in education,
Yeah.
that it'll be less cost impactful at that time. So I want to make sure no one thinks this is purely an enrollment-driven project. It is a educational programming project that is being looked at to say, how does the school fit into the next 30 to 40 years in teaching, not
Okay.
just because the enrollment is going up or down.
So can you give an example of a program that is being widely used across the state that Hampstead isn't able to implement because of our lack of?
I mean, someone here is better to speak about that. You look at the classroom sizes, that you can't put this many students. It's not that there's more enrollment, there's just, it's not the facility that allows them. Is there a maker space here? You know, it's things of that nature that are coming. How do you teach students in special education, things of that nature? So I'm not saying it doesn't offer it, I'm saying it can offer it in a more effective way of doing it.
Okay.
And right now, you don't have that.
Okay, thank you.
I would, actually, I can add just a couple of other things, and,
Okay.
And again, to the chair's earlier point, anybody here is more than welcome to take tours of the school. We're very happy to facilitate those either on the open house days, and then as we're able to facilitate other tours even outside of those dates as well. And thank you for coming up and speaking, because sometimes I forget that new people come to town and they haven't seen this year after year as some of us have. So it's good to have this discussion and refresh it. We have right now, we've talked about this on several occasions, we have, for instance, in special education, quite literally closets. They're formerly closets that have been repurposed for special education needs. And we just, that's not acceptable to us. We have no sprinklers in our elementary school, and that's not acceptable to us. So you're right, we do talk about programmatic things, but there are some really just fundamental things that we have to address at this. And the other thing too, you know, to tie it back to the special education, is we have an obligation to those students that are in special education programs to provide adequate education for them. And if we fail to do that, then those students oftentimes get placed out of district, and there's a significant cost differential. Years ago, the town made the conscious decision to provide as many services as we can to the students in town. That way, students who have those special needs, to the extent possible, would be able to be educated in town, and that was a good thing. We're losing some of that ability when we have to put stuff in and shoehorn it into closets, and it's just, again, this, if you take the tour, and I invite anybody to do that, you'll be able to see some of these things. So there are some other things, even outside of classroom size, that we're trying to address with this, so.
The other thing that's happened over the years is the deficiencies that we have been able to stay in place because they've been grandfathered. And that was acceptable in the past. That's no longer acceptable to this board or to many people in this town, to the majority of people in this town who vote for this project. We don't feel that our students should be in a school where everything's been grandfathered in. So that's another
I have
aspect.
children there,
it's
I
another
100%
aspect
agree, but
of this. Okay. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Can I just add something too?
Sure.
The other thing to take into consideration is, I believe in the presentation it said that we were no longer using the portable classrooms, and while that is true that we're not using the portable classrooms as classrooms, that space is still needed and still being used. For instance, the teacher's copy room has been placed out there. There is also, I believe, a meeting space that's being housed out there, and the music room has been brought back onto the stage, which does impact other programs as well, and it is a very cramped, undersized space that is being used to house music at this point in time.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments?
I have a quick one. So,
Would you please state your name and your address?
Lee Campos. I don't want to list my street address, but I live on the west side of Hampstead. And, you know, the plans are beautiful. I was hoping to see a bigger turnout tonight. And my concern is basically that last year this got voted down for several $100,000 less. But obviously there are some pretty immediate needs. You know, so in the event that this gets voted down this year, I saw that there was a October meeting that you guys had where the immediate needs like leaking windows and car exhaust and roofing and insulation and things of that nature could be remediated for about $1 million. is there any possibility for at least voting to do that in the short term?
So there's a couple of things there. Is one, so we have talked about this over the last couple of years, that we know, and I'll let Mr. Barone speak to this in more detail, but we know construction costs are rising. And we've tried to make that clear as we've brought forward the project, that this doesn't get cheaper. And in some cases, aside from construction costs, as the building further deteriorates, there will be additional work that's required over time. So deferring this and deferring it and deferring and delaying this basically doesn't help from a cost perspective. I'll let Ms. Barone speak to it, and then I'll speak to your other part about doing it sort of piecemeal.
I'm not sure what that October meeting was, so we're seeing escalation right now anywhere between 4% and 6% per year. So if you keep delaying this, unless there's a drastic downturn, this same project will cost that much more every year. What we've seen in other districts that keep on voting it down and doing things piecemeal is that all the money they spend each year, and it could be significant, it could be sometimes they'll put $500,000 a year in a budget, they'll spend that, and when they come to really do the renewal again, it's essentially lost money, because they haven't been able to recoup that when you do a reprogramming and reconstruction of the project. So I caution people to take the cheap way out. And I understand it's tax impactful, but if you do things piecemeal, it's like buying a wheel at a time on a car, or a piece in a car.
No, I'm not arguing.
No, I'm not arguing. I'm just trying to explain that to the public. I'm not sure where this $1 million came about. I'm sure there's many things you can do for $1 million, but is it the most cost-effective way for the taxpayers and for the benefit of the students?
I'm just looking for a way that kids aren't breathing car exhaust in the short.
I understand that.
So.
Oh, yeah, and we did discuss that at our meeting, you're correct, because we were trying to look at alternative ways also. But really, I think the bottom line is the decision we reached is it's just not the proper way to do it.
But is there any way to cut down costs to make it more palatable, or to build up rather than out? I mean, is there anything to be done that can maybe make it a little more attractive to town so that people actually vote yes on it and or show up to meetings? I would
just say, just reiterate what I said before, is if you looked at the project from when it was first introduced, this is dramatically reduced from that. So we have dropped it to try to reduce the price to what we consider to be the bare minimum of things that we believe need to get done. And then, I'll say very clearly, because I've said it to the other members and I've said it in school board meetings as well, is that, well, there's an argument to be made to doing maybe some of the most essential work within the budget as opposed to a warrant article. As Mr. Barone said, it's the least efficient and most expensive way to do it overall, right? And he talked about it from a car perspective, but it's the same thing. If you were renovating, a part of your house, if you were renovating your kitchen, you don't buy just one thing, have the contractors come in and do that, and then wait 6 months to a year and have them come in and do the sink, and wait 6 months to a year and then have them come in and do one of the appliances. It's just not the efficient way to do it. And I'm not saying that you're suggesting that.
No, I understand. I just wonder, I guess.
Worth discussion.
Now it's the second time. In the event that it doesn't pass, what's the next step? Like, what do we do for next year then? At what point? I mean, at what point do you stop putting up the same plan and getting the same result? You know what I mean?
This isn't the same plan, though. This is only the second year for this plan. Mm-hmm. There was another plan with different variations on it in the past that didn't pass either. Understood. And I feel your frustration. I think we all do. But we've looked at this from every angle. We've looked at this from a cost perspective. We've looked at this from programming, and unfortunately, as Selectman Guthrie said, this comes down to a personal issue for everyone in their house, and they're going to vote, and many people vote their pocketbook. I think the only thing we can hope for as a board is that people like yourself, who feel strongly that this should pass, need to, and I'm not talking to you personally, but people need to get out there and talk to their neighbors, talk to their business partners, and make this happen. Because it's, otherwise we're going to be back here again next year. As a board, we can't just say, oh, we're okay with this. So that's my suggestion is people need to get out and start talking about it and tell your neighbors to get out and vote for it.
So there was, or there is, I suppose, there is one other thing that the board hasn't sort of explored with regard to this. And I'll be honest, I've been one of the, I would oppose this, is that we don't do it as a bond. And if we didn't do it as a bond, then it would only require a 50% vote as opposed to the 2/3 vote. The reason why I've opposed that is because all of the cost would be passed on to the taxpayers in a single year, as opposed to spread over 20 years. So the tax impact for the property owners in town would be very significant. And we've crossed that 50% threshold before in these votes. So, in theory, at least, a 1 year could have passed, if those people would have voted the same way. But again, the difference is you're getting hit with all of that tax in 1 year as opposed to 20
I'm not sure
years.
I would have voted the same way.
But so and there you go. And so as we talk about, what are the alternatives, that is an alternative. The board hasn't pursued that largely because of the massive impact to taxpayers compared to that chart. So.
And that also to speak to
In the mic.
I know, Lee, that you watched that meeting where we talked about the $1 million option. And one of the reasons that was brought up was because it could be done potentially without a bond. And it could pass at the 50%, as Jason mentioned. However, again, even though it's not the same price as the project, it's still gonna hit in 1 year. And one of the negatives that I know I personally felt with doing that was I feel it drastically reduces the chance that we can then get the rest of the project passed, because you're going to have people who were hit hard with $1 million increase in 1 year, and that's what's going to stick in people's mind. Not that we're now looking at a bond. So that's the other reason it also makes it difficult to do that, in addition to it's more expensive over time.
And I just wanted to reiterate too, as far as the $1 million option that we keep talking about, I believe at that meeting what we were talking about was asking for an additional $1 million from the taxpayers without really having any idea of how far it would go or what issues it would address, but knowing that at least we would be able to do more than what we would do if we had nothing. And I think when we were brainstorming this idea out loud at a meeting, we said, and we could put a disclaimer in there if we were to ask for it on the warrant, that if Article 2 should pass, then we won't collect that $1 million, just so everybody's up to speed and on the same page. The other thing that I think is important to realize is that, yes, I don't have $7 million in my pocketbook right now or in my bank account, and if I did, honestly, I would have donated it to the school by now to get built. But it typically costs about $110 million to build a school. So to do the renovations that we're proposing at $7 million is not that astronomical of a price tag. Although, again, like I said, I realize I don't have the $7 million in my pocketbook. It's likely that many of you don't. So just, you have to keep it in perspective.
And just to be clear, I want to clarify that that was a discussion that we had, and it was kind of a brainstorming idea, looking at possibilities. It really was not on the table as a viable option for us. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions?
One quick question.
Yeah, please come up. Just come up so we can hear you. Thank you.
Karen Hotailing, Norfolk Street in Hampstead. Who pays, or how do the soft costs get paid if it's not approved?
Mr. Baroni, want to answer that?
Right now, this team has essentially donated its time for the second event. So you have no soft cost incurrence right now.
Okay, let me go back then to Bread Loaf. How did they get paid?
That's before me, so.
It was like $1 million.
Out of the budget, I believe, right?
What's
Yeah.
that?
Was
I
out
think
of
I
the
paid out
budget?
of the
Bread Loaf got paid?
Yeah.
Out of
Yeah.
the
They were
budget?
paid out of the school district budget.
Yeah, the original Bread Loaf study was a study that was commissioned, it was actually prior to my time on the board, but it was commissioned by the board, paid for out of the school boards, or well, not the school boards, but the district's budget.
It was they were soft costs
That's correct.
That's yes.
Yep, architectural drawings and
With
that nature.
associated with the bond issue that never got approved.
Correct.
So therefore, there was never any funding approved. That's my question.
For the previous bonds, yes, that's correct. The soft costs that were associated with the previous bonds were not approved. That's correct.
So I'm repeating my question. How did they get paid?
Because in some cases, like the architectural fees that were done in advance of that bond, those are funded by the school district, separate from the bond. So we had a set of prints that were drawn up by Breadloaf. That was a separate project, even though it was for the bond. We paid for those prints. We paid for the Breadloaf study. There's a number of other studies that were commissioned in association with that. So those were all just separate fees that the school district paid out in advance of preparing that bond.
Okay.
So they were commissioned to do the work, they were owed the money, and so we had to pay them regardless of whether or not the bond passed.
Okay, I understand that. That's the reason for my question. Where did the money come from? Because it was never approved.
Because the project wasn't approved, the money came from the school district budget.
Okay, all right. I'm not really satisfied with the answer, but that's fine. Because
Is
now I'm
anyone here
seeing
to answer
the
that better?
$750,000 for soft costs included as part of the 7.994. That's the reason for my question.
Mr. Dowd, our business administrator.
I thought that's the question that you were asking. In fact, I pulled it out right here. So when you're looking at the handout on the renovation project,
Correct.
and on that it lists hard costs and soft costs. The last project that we undertook, the district expended quite a bit in funds on very specific plans and designs, and those designs got scaled down over time, and the money that was put into those plans and those designs wasn't what they'd have to be done over again. This project is different because I think the school board has gone and requested services and studies and designs that represent basically what you see here. If the project is approved, more detailed architectural and engineering fees and project management fees and things of that nature would be expended, but only if the project is approved. In the last project, I think that we had expended quite a bit up front to get more detailed plans and more detailed designs. In this project, that's what's different. And those projects, that $750,000, we don't incur those unless the project is approved.
Okay. But my question goes back to Breadloaf, because it was almost $1 million.
That seems like a lot. I would have
No,
to
it was
defer.
almost $1 million, because I remember the handout that is similar to that, but it was kind of hidden, but it was almost $1 million.
Was that-
Owner's costs. That's what it was reflected as, owner's costs.
I'm not sure what Breadloaf gave you. There may have been a projection of their soft cost. I'm not sure if the district paid them $1 million. It may be like what we're providing here is a total project budget. The $750,000, this approach was taken totally differently. The plans are not 100% done. The school board, and we recommended the school board took into consideration, we needed sufficient schematic designs to give you a solid price. We are not encumbering $750,000. It's just if the project goes through, the bond will pay for the soft cost. At Breadloaf, again, I wasn't there, there may have been a line item that said soft cost $1 million in a budget presentation, but I don't think you paid $1 million. I don't know. So that may be a number that's close to our 750 for something you would have paid had it been approved. So $1 million seems like a lot of money for a bond support.
I would tend to agree.
But
And I'm speaking way out of school here, but it was before my time, but about 300,000 rings a bell, and
that would seem reasonable.
up front of those designs drawn up.
If you did that during a different method than we've undertaken now.
Right.
The number that I recall was $282,000,
There you go.
right? And that was for the drawings at the end, and that we had to pay for even though it didn't pass.
Okay.
And that whole project with Breadloaf was really structured very differently and used a different approach that we're using this year and that we used last year.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and part of bringing Trident on board, Mr. Baroni, was to be our owner's project manager, to help us kind of navigate through so that we're not spending money or throwing money out the window without ending up with a project at the end.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
why we're
Thank
doing
you.
it this way.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you for the question. Are there any other questions?
Hi, Jen Abbott, 132 Main Street. I have a really simple, easy question. The presentation you guys did we get a copy of that? It's not included in the one that's up there.
Well, it's posted.
Where is it
it's
posted? I'm
on the
sorry.
It'll be on the website?
Will be or is?
Will be.
A roundabout?
It'll be part of the presentation of this
My
meeting.
child, I'm sorry.
It's part of the
Don't be sorry,
presentation
she's
for the
cute.
meeting.
She is cute. Hi.
What are you doing?
Yep.
No, Mommy's talking.
What we've done in the past is we've taken this presentation and we've kind of cut it off from the rest of it so that you could just go online and see just the bond presentation.
To answer your question,
I just felt
simply-
it was very useful.
Typically within the week.
Okay,
it'll be
because
up on
what
the-
I just thought it was in addition to what
Yep.
we have, and I just thought it was useful. I wasn't able to really take notes, so.
Yep, so,
yeah.
so typically within about a week, it's up on the district website, and then the other thing too is, the meeting's being recorded, so should you desire to turn on Hampstead
I know.
to public television.
It's hard to hear sometimes on the TV, but
Okay.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Again, any other questions or comments? No? Any other comments from board members, administrators, or the construction team? Anything that needs to be said that hasn't been said? No? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the hearing on the bond. Thank you. We're going to take a brief recess, and then I will open the hearing